And we'll see how well this goes. Okay, this is pre-processed here. So right now we're sitting at 4.628 million, and I'm going to decimate this thing down to, let's give it like, we'll start with like 500,000. We'll decimate this. And you see when we get it down to 500,000, it's a lot easier to work with, and we didn't lose any perceptible details. So that's where I'm going to start. That'll just make it a little bit easier for me to move this thing around. So, like I said before, we turned our floor on. Well, like I said before, but you couldn't hear me, I turned the floor on just to make sure we're oriented in ZBrush correctly, Z forward, and all that. And it also looks like we're made of several different parts here. That should be okay, but we can try and clean up a little bit of that too. So let's go ahead and stand him up. So and this was a sculpt that was destroyed. And like I said, we're going to try and save it here. So if he's putting more of his weight on this leg here, it looks like the little support leg would go down further. Maybe. Let's see. And we'll go ahead, and we don't need to center him perfectly because he's not going to be a mirrored object, although you could sit here and mirror and weld and get that down as well as you could. Okay, so we got this piece here, and we also have an extra Thor head, which looks like it's a little bit updated. Yeah, so it's a little bit, so we got the body here, and then this Thor head is a little better. So what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and match that up. I'm going to turn on transparent, and I'm going to move this up here and move this back. And let's go ahead and rotate this thing around so we can kind of get it into place here. And luckily they're the same size, which helps a little bit. That way we don't have to rescale it or anything. So we can kind of just mush this back into place. So that just gives us a frame of reference. So the body scan with the head lost a little bit of detail, but the head scan by itself has plenty. Let's see here. Okay, let's say that's close enough. So now what we can do is alt tap this body scan here. Looks like I need to rotate it a little bit more this way. Nope, head, there we go. So now we go here to here. Let's take this and we'll rotate it. Very, very, a little bit tedious getting this stuff lined up, but it doesn't take too long. So we got the head on there and we got the body. So now we don't need this original head. I'm going to go ahead and turn my floor off since we don't really need that anymore. And we'll go ahead and get rid of this. Make sure I don't leave any holes that are too large here. And that we can probably just leave. And we'll grab a little bit more of his neck here. So we'll go ahead and get rid of that. So now, if I turn on transparency, you're going to see we got this head here, and then we got his body. On the body, I'm going to go ahead and delete hidden, because we don't need those polys anymore. And I'm going to go ahead and merge down. There we go. So we've got a new high-resolution head here, and this head is a separate piece. So we'll get to that in a second. So we've got our Thor body and our head. And then these pieces here might be trouble. What I'm going to do is hold down Control-Shift, grab this little piece. Let's do a quick save, actually. I don't know what he's holding there. Let's assume something manly. Okay, so let's see. We got this piece here. I'm going to go grab this one, Control-Shift-A. And we've got this piece here. So if I mask this piece and invert it, I'm going to pop this piece out and see. It's not really adding a whole lot, I don't think. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. It's just going to cause a little bit of problems here while we're sculpting this thing. And another thing we could do, so I know I don't need this piece. We can go ahead and get rid of that. So we can go ahead and delete hidden. So also with this one, what I can try doing, we know that head is its own piece. I'm going to grab this one temporarily, Control-Shift-A to just grab the head. I'm going to split this off. I'm going to grab this body, and I'm just going to grab a piece of the contiguous body, Control-Shift-A. Okay, that looks pretty clean. If I control shift drag now, it's going to invert. You see there's a lot of garbage just kind of hanging out. So what I'm going to do is just do a quick delete hidden on that, and then we can merge that head back down. And that'll kind of clean up that body scan with all those little floaters that were hanging around. So these should all be contiguous meshes. And we've also got the little post from the original armature on there. So I think we're getting pretty close. So now let's figure out how we want to make this one contiguous mesh and remesh it. So one thing we can try and do is just dynameshing it and hoping that it closes all the holes and it reacts correctly. So let's give that a shot, just as one of our first tries here. I don't know what resolution we're working at. So I'm going to turn off project, turn off blur, and just hit dynamesh, and we'll see how that goes. And yeah, it crashed. So dynamesh isn't going to be something we can do. It's not a huge deal. I just wanted to try it before we get too far down. So we know that's not going to work. Let's go ahead and load that up. And oops, looks like when I did a quick save, we didn't grab this part. So really quickly, I can just, again, I'm going to grab his head here, Control Shift A, and then I'm going to split him off. I'm going to grab his body, Control Shift, grab a little piece of his body here, Control Shift A, and then just do a delete hidden, and then merge these back down. And should I have dynamesh, zero mesh the head? Nah, we'll be okay. So I'll merge these down, and now we'll do a quick save, and that'll go ahead and save it. So, and again, if I miss something in the chat, just bear with me. Just keep saying it, and I'll catch it up in here. I have a ton of tutorials about alphas. If you go back through, you know what? I need my Nightbot thing hooked up. So we can do here, and we can do, where else we got? We got here. And let me go to my playlist here. So here, if you go to Intro to ZBrush Part 3, 3 is where I get heavy into the ZBrush alphas. And also the Twitch TV PavMic, I go over everything. So you can just go in there, and there's a ton of stuff on custom alphas. I think when we did, you see the first preview video on the twitchtv.pavmic there. You can see the planet with like all the little, and also the live stream rocks. We go over into custom alphas too. We do like bullet hole alphas that we can kind of scatter. So a lot of alphas there. I got this from Hannibal Sculptor. He messaged me on Facebook, and this sculpt got destroyed, and so but he has scans of it. So we're gonna try and save his sculpt here with the scan. Looks like he's a little off balance. Let's tilt him forward a little more here. Okay, so now we tried dynameshing, and that didn't work. So what I'm going to try this time is, because if we could probably zero mesh this piece, the body and the head, and then project all, and that might give us a little bit more of a usable mesh. But I'm going to try remeshing this thing. So what I'm going to do, I guess I don't need this head here, so we'll go ahead and delete that. So we got this body here. Let's go to, instead of Z-remesh, let's try remesh. And I'm not going to do remesh across X, and we're just going to hit remesh all. And that'll go ahead and give me a blanket of polygons here that I can start projecting back to my object and start cleaning up. It's not ideal. It's not how I would prefer to work. A dynameshing would be the easier option, but it seems to be having a problem. So I'm going to go back to the Z-remesh here. And let's go ahead and fix this a little bit. And you can zero mesh at different resolutions and polish. So if we delete that and we go, you know what, only polish at 5 and bump my resolution up to like 175, and we hit remesh. And again, not across any symmetry because he's not symmetrical. That'll give us a little bit more of a detailed mesh here. And so then we can grab this. Now all of these interior faces are going to be a nightmare. So I'm going to clean some of those up if I can really quickly. Just by, that's the best way to do this. If I want to grab an edge ring, I guess we'll just mask. So I'm going to go over here to my control brush, and we're just going to mask the bottom here. Like so. And then we'll control alt. Actually, you know what? We're going to hold control, go to auto masking, and we're going to turn on backface masking. So we're going to, and also I'm going to go to preferences, edit, align cursor to surface so my cursor isn't flip-flopping all over the place. I don't mind it when I'm doing hard surface like Z-modeler stuff, but not a big fan of it while I'm just doing this kind of stuff. So So with backface masking on, I'm not masking through the object here, and I guess I could turn off polyframe here. And it looks like on this one, let's go ahead and get rid of this one here. So what I'm basically doing is creating a ring of a polygroup ring that I can isolate, invert, and then do an auto groups, just so I can get rid of these interior faces from my Z mesh. We want to make this an airtight mesh here. So we'll go ahead and connect those up, Control-Alt-Paint, Control-Alt-Tap to kind of sharpen that mask up, and then again hit Control-W to make those all one polygroup. We're going to Control-Shift, and we're going to grab all of these red ones, and now because we don't have a continuous mesh from the inside of the foot to the outside anymore, I think we should be able to do auto groups now. There we go. So now all those interior meshes are blue. So now we can get rid of blue, pink, delete hidden, close holes, and there we go. If we want to close holes manually, let's go ahead and delete hidden. Let's grab, we could get fancier, but let's see if this will work. So we'll go close convex hole on this one and this one. We're just using Z modeler, which for you guys will be BZM, and now we can just use Z modeler to kind of close those holes manually. And now we have this mesh. Now this mesh we can Dynamesh. So if we go over here to turn off project, turn off blur, and just hit Dynamesh, it should Dynamesh just fine. Yeah. So let's up the resolution on that Dynamesh just a bit. And the Dynamesh resolution is probably going to be the same as the remesh. So like 170 would get us back where we are. We'll just dial in 216 here. Good enough. So we're starting kind of low. But now it's just a matter of getting these polygon meshes to this polygon mesh here. Now on these polygon meshes down here, I don't necessarily want to project those because I know on the original mesh it's a hole. So I'm going to isolate that polygroup, hit Control-W, and so now come on ZBrush. They are separate polygroups, but they look exactly the same. So I'm going to keep hitting Control-W until I get something different. There we go. So the pink ones I don't care about projecting. It's the yellow ones I'm worried about. So with both of these showing, I can go to Subtool. So just so you know, I'm going to go to Subtool, Project All, and I'm just going to do this in my custom menu here. If you want more info on custom menus and hotkeys, I'm just going to keep spamming this link here. Go to this link and go to Intro to ZBrush Part 2, and it'll walk you through all of that stuff. Using ZBrush for architecture environment, sure. I should bring it. One of my students, Cameron, was just recently doing some mock-ups using a bunch of stuff, but ZBrush is one of them, and doing these really cool thumbnails with like ships and railing and really cool set design like that. But we can certainly talk about that in a second. So remesh and Z-remesh. Basically, remesh looks at. Good question. So we're going to go to cylinder here and make a polymesh 3D. And let's go ahead and grab the bottom of this one. We'll just delete it. So what this cylinder would do, if I went to geometry, Z-remesh, it's going to take whatever geometry I have, and we'll do same, adapt the size down to 0, and it will remesh that as new geometry. If I go to, Z-remesh that new geometry. If I go to remesh, which is under subtool. So Z-remesh is under geometry because it actually replaces my geometry. So if I don't want to lose this, I'm going to want to duplicate this off and then do a Z-remesh, and then you can do project all to project it back to this original cylinder if you want to do that. Now with this one here, and it replaces the geometry, so that's why it's under the geometry tab. Remesh is under the subtool tab because, and it is symmetrical across EX, but you can turn that off. What remesh does is instead of making this new geometry with all sorts of different quads and stuff, remesh just throws like a Dynamesh looking mesh. It just creates a Dynamesh mesh around the object, and it actually goes through and does all of your surfaces. So it's basically, and if you look in here, when it gets to around these corners, it starts turning into triangles. But when you go to the top view, it looks very, very nice. If I go to the side view, it looks nice. But then as we transition over, what it's basically doing is, imagine a box, just like Shadowbox. You're projecting a resolution of a box to your object from all angles and creating geometry around the surface of your object. So instead of replacing the object, Here's our original. Here's our remesh. It's giving us basically a Dynamesh looking skin around our object that we can then project to. So remesh, and it will do that with anything in your scene. So if we go delete here, anything that's visible, I should say. So we'll delete that. And you know what? Let's go ahead and cap this real quick. So we'll go to close convex hole. We'll just close that off. And I'm just going to go ahead and do an insert sphere, and we'll move this down. So here's another difference. So if I take these two objects and I duplicate this one off, and I'm in solo mode so you don't see both of them, and I Z-remesh this thing. So we're going to go to geometry, Z-remesh. We'll do same, adapt size down to 0. That replaces this geometry with new quad geometry, and we go over Z-remesh stuff a lot in previous videos. And if you want to like save the, let's go ahead and do a quick group by normal. So that'll be under your polygroup menu. If you do keep groups, smoothing down to 0, and Z-remesh will give me a little bit nicer result on that cylinder there. And of course you can do double resolution and it'll give you more resolution. If you want to get rid of some of this stuff, you can go to edge loop, delete loops, and that'll get rid of any extraneous loops, although we got rid of one of those. But anyways, it keeps the polygroups, it keeps the objects separate, and it Z-remeshes the objects that you see. However, and it gives it nice new clean quad topology. However, on this one, if I remesh it, it's going to just, whoops, okay, so we're still in solo mode here. If we remesh it, all it's going to do is cover it in a blanket of kind of a Dynamesh or a unified mesh skin, which is fine because we can still, you know, while we're out of solo mode here, I can still go to project all and just start projecting it back. It's going to have kind of a hard time, but that's what we're going to run into when we go here, is to get this projection back. So why didn't we Z-remesh the original sculpt? Well, we could have for sure. And part of the problem is the head is separate, so we could Z-remesh that, and then we could Z-remesh the body and project those back and then close holes. So in fact, let's try doing that. I'm going to do a quick save so we can always get back to this point. And let's see if this will work. I think it'll, well, no, it should work fine. Let's run a Z-remesh operation. Now, I don't want to lose my original sculpt here, so I'm going to duplicate this off because Z-remesh is going to completely obliterate all of that stuff. So we'll go to Z-remesher. I'm going to leave the adaptive size alone. Target polygon count is fine. These are separate meshes, so I don't need to keep groups, and we'll just hit Z-remesh. And we'll let that run. If you have X symmetry turned on, if that's up in your transform menu, it will do a symmetrical sculpt. I think it goes negative X to positive X, so you obviously want to have X turned off here. How do I avoid getting spiral loops when I Z-remesh? It's actually pretty good. I know in previous versions before R7P3 that, yeah, when you do it as Z-remesh, you'd get spirals on your arms and fingers. It happens sometimes still, but it does a pretty good job. In order to really help it out, what you can do is either put, it's called ZBrush, it's the curve Z. Let me show you where it is. Don't worry about that. We'll get that in a second. So if we go to Z-remesher guides here, you can use that to kind of draw rings around, or what I would prefer to do is usually go through here, like on the Thor body, for example. We'll go into solo mode. I would go through here and I would slice, like, okay, I don't want any spirals on his arm, so I'm going to slice here and then slice here. And then when I go to Z-remesh, I would say, just like I did previously on the cylinder, I'd go Z-remesh, keep groups, take your smooth groups down to 0. You don't want to smooth them. And that'll basically do the equivalent of putting a Z-remesher curve around these two edges. If you did want to put a Z-remesher curve, you could just isolate that, go to stroke, curve, functions, and then you could just frame your mesh with your border. And then, you know, Z-remesh would treat these curves as Z-remesher curves to guide that. But of course, just having polygroup at borders there does the exact same thing. Keep groups on, and in that way it'll go from here to here, and it shouldn't do spirals in between there. I say shouldn't, probably won't. But now we have our Z-remesh body. Now it was having a little bit of trouble because there's a lot of like little squirrely things happening in this original body here. I could go in and smooth that out. I couldn't Dynamesh it. It was crashing on Dynamesh. So not ideal, although I could try. Okay, let's do a quick save on this one. We're going to try all sorts of stuff today. I'm going to grab this body here, Control-Shift-A, and we're going to split this off, and let's just try Dynameshing this. Okay, so that worked. Let's Dynamesh at a higher resolution. Let's go delete hidden. Whenever Dynamesh does something weird, try deleting hidden. There we go. So on this Dynamesh, it Dynameshed it just fine without losing any detail. So that's an option. And let's go to this head. Ooh, we had a little extra piece there. That doesn't help. So let's take this head here. We're going to go to delete hidden. And let's try Dynameshing this thing. So turn off project, turn off blur, crank my resolution up. And I'm at a resolution like 1024. Okay, so the head's having the problem. Good to know. So we might be able to get away with Dynameshing the body and having that one continuous mesh, remeshing the head, capping it, projecting, and then putting those together. A lot of different ways to skin this cat. And I think that'll be a little bit more helpful. So what I'm going to do is, because this Z mesh is okay, we can work with this. It's just not ideal. So let's go ahead and let's delete that for now. Our remesh is kind of sitting out here. That resolution right here is going to be a problem around his head. So we might remesh his head and his body separately because that's going to be a pain. But I think this will work better. So let's go ahead and grab his body here. Control-Shift-A. And we will split hidden. And we'll move his head to the top here. And I'm going to get rid of, again, those two extra pieces here. So I'm going to grab his little piece of his head, Control-Shift-A. And let's go ahead and delete hidden. And now what we're going to do is do another quick save. Oh, and by the way, if you hover over this, you'll see the quick save is hotkey for that is 9. If you hold down Control, it'll give you even more information on that. Same thing with anything in ZBrush. You just hover over it. It'll give you the hotkey and the name, and then you hold down Control. It'll give you more information. So where do I work? I work at Certain Affinity in Austin, Texas. Game company. Oh, thank you for watching my tutorials. Glad they're helping out. How do you spread selection after selecting a small part and hiding the rest of the mesh? Do you use Dynamesh Master? I don't use Dynamesh Master, but definitely check that out. That's a very useful tool. I think Joseph Drust made that tool. A couple guys at work use it. I just kind of dial in the numbers. I don't Dynamesh that often, so and I Dynamesh a lot, but not anything super specific. So I can usually just eyeball it. But Dynamesh Master is a plugin. You can Google that. Dynamesh Master ZBrush Central should take you to the page, or his Gumroad, ZBrush Joseph Drust Gumroad. So how I'm doing that is just you can grab a little piece, and I'm doing Control-Shift-A, which is under visibility. You're going to see Grow All is Control-Shift-A, and that just grows all parts. It's a little bit faster than like making a polygroup and Control-Shift clicking sometimes, especially if you don't necessarily have a polygroup. So we know Dynamesh is going to work on this one here. So I'm going to turn off project, turn off blur. I'm going to crank that up to like 1300 resolution. And that'll go ahead and close my holes. We didn't lose any perceptible detail there, I don't think. So this will be a much nicer mesh to work with, a nice contiguous mesh. And also Dynamesh was nice enough to polygroup my holes that it created separately, so I can still go in and we can just grab this and project later on if we need to. Now the Thor head is giving us a little bit of trouble, so I'm going to go into Select Lasso here. I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff here we probably don't need, and anything that's going to cause it to kind of be a pain when it goes to like close holes or something. I'm going to take away some of the ambiguity of this mesh here. Yeah, there's a hole there that it could have a problem with. And really, any of this detail stuff, we can get that back. I'm not really losing too much here. So I'm going to go ahead and do a delete hidden. Now on this one, what we can do is we can Z-remesh this piece here and then start projecting and then close the holes too. So I'm going to duplicate this off, and we'll just Z-remesh this separately. So I'm going to go down here to Geometry, Z-remesher. We don't need to keep groups on because it's just one polygroup. Target polygon count of 5 is fine. We're going from 350,000 down to almost nothing. Adaptive size, I'll put this down at like 25. Basically what adaptive size does, and I can bring in a Marvelous Designer mesh to kind of demonstrate this better. But basically, if adaptive size is down at 0, it's going to give you nice even quads, but it will tend to disregard surface changes. So I kind of want to keep the surface changes in here because it'll try and build edges where they need to go. And on an organic mesh, it works really well. but the target polygon count is probably going to escalate, but I don't care about target polygon count because this isn't for a game res, it's just for getting this detail back onto another mesh. So let's just z-remesh this thing and let that go. Let's see, but can you grow it slowly by close geometry? Oh yeah, so when this is done, it's just under visibility, and it's Control-Shift-X is the hotkey for grow your selection. Control-Shift-S is shrink your selection, so you can grab a piece, or you can, yeah, it's visibility, so you can grab a piece and then grow it, and you can just keep hitting that and hitting that and hitting that, and that'll kind of grow it. I just do grow all, so if I do an example here, we can do this, and Control-Shift-X expands it, and you can just keep doing this until it gets all the way there, or you can just do Control-Shift-A, or you can do, grab a piece of it and you can do Control-Shift-S, and that'll shrink. So either one of those. And again, that's just under your visibility menu here. Hide, show, grow, grow all, shrink, all that good stuff. Outer ring. So now we have a mesh here that's much lower fidelity that we can kind of work with here. And you know what? I'm going to clean up this border a little bit. So I'm going to go, and I'm going to z-remesh this again, actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, what am I looking for here? Masking. And I'll show you why I'm doing this in just a minute. So I'm going to go to masking, mask by feature border. So that's going to mask my border out. I can grow this if I want to. So I can grow my mask. Here we'll grow it twice. And then we'll invert that mask. If I want to tighten this mask up a little bit, I can Control-Alt-Tap and I can sharpen it up, or I can just do sharpen mask. And that'll just kind of get these isolated. And then I can go to my deformation menu and I can do like a polish or a smooth or a polish by features and just kind of smooth that border ring out. Of course, you don't have to grow it or shrink it or tighten it up. You can just do your border, mask your border, invert that. But the reason I'm doing that is just so when I go to close this hole, it's a little bit nicer. Now, because I've z-remeshed this, I've lost a little bit of detail. So again, you can go to geometry or, you know, project all and just project that back if you want to make sure you got all this stuff. And I'm going to make sure this is all one contiguous mesh too. Control-Shift-A, delete hidden. Okay, so there was some weirdo geometry just hanging out, which I didn't like. And I'm going to go ahead and smooth this down too. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to kill that completely. Anything that's giving me problems here, I can just go ahead and delete hidden. And you know what? Let's sew this up. Let's sew this up manually. I'm going to go to my Z modeler brush, BZM. I'm going to delete a single poly here, because if I close holes, it's going to close all, you know, the bottom holes and any of that stuff. And I'm just going to make sure that I go to bridge, edges, and I can just quickly just stitch this thing up like so. A little bit of Z modeler work never killed anybody. And then we can just do Control-W, make it all one poly group, smooth this out. We'll grab that detail later. It doesn't need to be built in. And now that I've got that new border edge, you know how it gets kind of crumbly along that border edge? It's not a huge deal, but if you wanted to, you could go ahead and do geometry, z-remesher. We'll do same. And that'll just give me a little bit nicer geometry around that border there. So if I did want to, I can just make this one contiguous mesh by going to close. Let's do a concave hole. And let's do a quick save while we're thinking about it. So we'll close concave hole. So convex hole would just do to a single poked face. Concave hole will give me a little bit more of a sculptable mesh here. So now I can kind of take this and we can kind of just give ourselves a little bit of breathing room. Make sure there's no errors going on in here. So one nice contiguous mesh here. So we've got head and hole. So what I want to do now is get that detail back onto this head mesh. I don't care about this hole, so I'm going to isolate just that head poly group. And I'm going to go to Subtool, Project All. And then we're going to bring this back. I'm going to go to Crease menu, and I'm going to crease PG. Oops. So that way, as I'm subdividing this, it'll keep this edge nice and creased. It won't lose any, it won't average any vertices there. So we've subdivided that. No, we just creased it. So now I'm going to go Control D, which is going to give us geometry subdivisions. And I'm going to isolate this one, and I'm going to Project All. Bring that back. And you can see, and also, just as long as their eyeballs are showing, I can go into solo mode and see how it's doing. It looks like it's picking up the detail just fine. So I'm going to, isolate this one again. Wait, Control D, isolate this one again, project all, bring everything back, and one more time, we'll do Control D, isolate this one, and we'll do project all. And the reason I'm projecting all just with this polygroup is because I don't want the whole projecting to anything in particular. So now we can do a comparison between the two. So here's our original scan, and then here's our Z project, and it looks like it grabbed all that detail just fine. And even better, if I go down here, I have all of these subdivisions that can just, you know, you can go down and sculpt in this subdivision and then continue to sculpt up and refine. And it also, if we go down to subdivision level 4 in polyframe, we have nice even quads here. Not too shabby of a surface to sculpt on. So that's one option just in general. But the reason we did that is so that we could dynamesh these two objects together, because I think that'll work a little bit better here. Because yeah, here's the, yeah, we didn't lose any real resolution here, but the head is much higher resolution. So let's go ahead and do a quick save. How did I open the Modify Topology tab? Is that under Modify Topology? Oh, so here's Modify Topology. Under Geometry, Modify Topology. This is just a custom menu. So if you go to here and you go to Intro to ZBrush Part 2, you can, it'll walk you through hotkeys and custom menus and all that good stuff. Sometimes project all causes some bad geo. How do you fix that besides smoothing? Yes, so we're probably going to run into that, and that would be using just a sneak peek. BZP is using the Z project brush to clean up any detail. So this one projected fine, luckily. So, okay, let's take a breather here. And really, I'm doing this by the seat of my pants. It's not like I'm going off a document or anything. So there might be a more elegant way to, you know, arrive at all these different solutions, but I think this will work fine. And so now that this is all closed off, this will dynamesh fine. So if I merge these down and then dynamesh, I think it'll do fine. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull this back in just a bit here, and also preferences, edit, turn off align cursor to surface. I'm just going through and again, just removing any ambiguity from the mesh here. Gets a little squirrely up in there, but that's okay. We can clean that up later. Okay, so turn off draw. We got this. So now what we got is this mesh here, and if I dynamesh these together at a high enough resolution, I won't lose anything. So let's do a quick save here, and I'm going to, let's merge these down, and that's going to be under your merge menu here. Merge, I got a hotkey for merge down. It's Alt E or Control E, I forget. Whatever I use in Photoshop. It's all muscle memory. I don't actually use my brain when I sculpt. So we got these together, so now I should be able to dynamesh these together. If I want to play it safe, I can duplicate this off, or not play it safe, but just have a point to go back to. And let's turn off project, turn off blur. The reason I'm turning off project, not that I don't want that detail back, you know what, it just takes a little bit longer, so I'm trying to dial in the resolution. Okay, so we did lose a little bit of detail on that dynamesh. We don't want to do that, so I'm going to crank that resolution on that dynamesh up. And kind of dial it in. Yeah, we're still losing a little bit. Let's go all the way up, turn off blur, dynamesh. Now, with that dynamesh, and I don't have dynamesh master, so I can't just plug it in. I can, you know, so there's my resolution capped out at 4096. I can go in here to deformation size and just go up 100. So if I go size, XYZ, up 100, and then dynamesh again, that'll give me more dynamesh resolution, just because there's more area. If you go to Enter to ZBrush Part 1 on this playlist, I'm going to keep spamming it. Spam. If you go to Enter to ZBrush Part 1 here, that'll go over dynamesh and all the dynamesh options and how dynamesh and all that stuff works together. So now we've dynameshed this thing together. It's all one contiguous mesh here. So if I hit Control W, it'll just make it all one polygroup. And now when I Z-remesh this, it'll be one nice contiguous mesh. And if we want to get this back down to our original, let's go ahead and take our size back down to -100. There we go. So one nice contiguous mesh. All the holes are closed. You know, and there's some squirrely stuff going on here. Let's undo that here. Let's grab this polygroup here and this polygroup here. There's a purple polygroup hanging out. I want to delete that. And also, before I Z-remesh, I do kind of want to clean some of this stuff up. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and grab our select lasso, and any of these like really thin meshes here, I'm going to get rid of. And really, if we're zero meshing this thing, we don't even need this bottom polygon here, so we can go ahead and kill that actually. So a little bit of cleanup work, and this is just like basic photo scan cleanup. If you want, you don't really need the mud around his feet probably, so we can. Mud's pretty easy to recreate. I'm assuming. I'm not a traditional sculptor. I'd like to be. I love watching traditional sculptors work. It's probably my favorite thing to do. But I am not. We use Chavant NSP and maquettes and stuff when we're in my anatomy class at Gemini. But a traditional sculptor I am not. Okay, so we've got these pieces here. I'm going to go ahead and delete hidden. And now if I do an auto groups or just a little bit fast, I'm going to grab this one, do Control-Shift-A. And now I can just do a delete hidden. And now when I zero mesh, it'll leave us holes on the bottom of the feet, but that's really fine. Oh, shoot. I forgot I didn't. I forgot I had a poly group for the head still. Damn it. There we go. Okay, so I need all of these together. So I'm going to grab this poly group here and this poly group here. And you know what? Let's go ahead. We'll grab all these crumblies too. All right, so that'll be delete hidden. Now I'm going to hit Control W. Make sure I don't lose anything. Always be aware of what you're deleting. Sorry about that, guys. And now we can go through really quickly and get rid of all this stuff. Because again, the zero mesh I'm making and we're projecting back to doesn't need all this stuff. Now, you could just dynamesh this thing and start sculpting. It's not a huge deal. But the question was, making a watertight mesh and zero-G projecting detail back. So we'll go ahead and do that. So we've already got to the point where it's sculptable with dynamesh at least. But we're going to go ahead and make this a little bit more cleaned up. And we'll use zero mesh too, because why not? Okay, so now I can go delete hidden. Whew. Okay, one contiguous mesh, all our details back. Our original Thor body is this size because we sized him up one. That's okay. If we want to match that, we can go ahead and size him back down. We sized him up for the dynamesh resolution, so we'll size him back down. And so now those two should match up. So here's our original scan. We go into solo mode. Original scan. Here's our dynamesh that's a little bit cleaned up. And now we can just zero mesh this and start projecting that back. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to take this one. We'll go to geometry, zero mesh, or adaptive size at 25 is fine, I think. And we'll do a quick save. And we will now zero mesh that. Cool. My computer. So here's a little bit. Let me see. So if you go to that link I've been spamming, it's kind of buried, so I'll just link you directly to the video. I've got this video here as my workspace setup, and I'm still using this computer. It's getting a little long in the tooth. It's just a laptop. Let's see, what are the hardware? I'm just using an Alienware laptop because I'm not going to build my own laptop. I would build my own PC, but my laptops, I just got to buy those. So it's a Alienware laptop, i7, 32 gig of RAM, NVIDIA GeForce 770 mobile. And if you look at the description, there's more information in there. The reason I use a laptop is because I have to go do demos at places. I have to go teach students at Gemini, and I always have to be able to take my work anywhere I go. So I have to kind of use a laptop. I would love to get just a beast of a machine. I'm eyeballing Threadripper for that. Just to kind of set up a beast machine at home and do a lot of rendering and work on. But I always need something to be able to take somewhere and demo, so I kind of need a beefy laptop too. This laptop is like 3 or 4 years old. It's just been a workhorse. No complaints. I've updated it slightly with SSDs all over the place. because I am a very impatient person. But so anyway, we got our body here. So here's our scan data, and now here's our ZRemesh body. So now it's just a simple matter of, and again, you can go to projectile. I'm just going to use my projectile button here, and as long as both of these are on, so we can see both of them, we can just go to projectile, and that just projects our ZRemesher body back to this body, and you're going to see it did a pretty good job. Before you do that, if you want to have one contiguous mesh, you're probably going to want to go down here and close these holes. So let's just do that masking trick again, kind of clean this edge up a little bit. So we'll go here, and we'll go to, I even have a macro for this. I can just run my macro that does a polished polygroup border. The ZBrush guys gave me that. But again, you can go mask by features, mask by border, control tab to invert that mask, and then ZRemesh again, just to get a nicer edge ring around that. So you can take your original ZRemesh body here, like so, and now we can just do another ZRemesh. Under geometry, ZRemesh, you see it's right there. And we'll do ZRemesh same, because that's fine. And then we'll just hit ZRemesher. That'll give me a little bit nicer edge rings around the bottom hole there. Let's see. Keep losing symmetry when Z modeler moves vertex infinity. I'll try that. I'm not sure why it would be doing that. I'll try that in a minute. So you have pants sculpting and the outside face is overlapping an inside face. What would you do? Pants sculpting and the outside face is overlapping inside face. I would try and separate your outside and inside poly groups if you can. You can also go into your pants, your sculpting brush, and go into auto masking, turn on back face. And that way you can kind of go to your inside interior faces of your pants and sculpt those in or inflate those in. And then while you're sculpting on the outside, turn on back face on thin meshes. That's why on pants I usually tend to cap instead of giving thickness, because it's just a pain to work on those thin meshes. So I cap when I can, but on a tank top, you're not able to kind of do that. So that's kind of a pain. So anyway, we've got this new mesh here, and let's go ahead and close these holes. If we do this is going to be a problem because it's going to want to close here and close here. It's not going to know how to bridge those very well, so I'm going to help it out with Z Modeler. I'm just going to go through here. I'm going to hover over this edge, and I'm going to go to Bridge Edge. I'm going to bridge this edge. And just again, to help it out some more, I'm going to bridge this edge. So now if I run a close holes operation, it'll just go ahead and close those convex holes. I can make that geometry as nice or as crappy as I want to. I think crappy will be fine for what I'm looking for. So now we can just project this mesh back to our original mesh here. So again, it's just going to be a simple matter of, we got both of these showing, so I can isolate. Well, I wouldn't isolate using that one, because a feature of the lasso brush is we can go Control Shift and grab an edge, and it'll select an edge ring. It's a feature, it's useful, but Select Rectangle doesn't do that. So if you're having a problem with that, just use Select Rectangle. So anyway, we've got both of these showing. If I isolate this top poly group here, we isolate that top poly group here. You can just go to the Subtool, Project All. I'll go ahead and project that detail back. Yay, and it seemed like it did fine. Control Shift to bring everything back, including those holes. And then again, we can go to Crease Poly Group to keep those edges nice and clean. And that's, of course, under your Crease menu, Crease PG. And then again, we can... Man, that's projecting just great. I'm just amazed at its projection capabilities. So, but we'll do cleanup stuff too. So we'll go here. We're in solo mode here. Now, they're both showing, both the eyeballs are on, but you can be in solo mode and still project to something that's visible. So you don't have to have it looking at it on your screen. So it's just a little bit easier. So while I'm looking at this thing, I can go Control D, get more resolution. So now we're at the 484,000. Our original mesh here is 1.4 million points, so we'll get back up to that just to make sure we're not losing too much. And we can go Control Shift, isolate this top one, and we'll do Project All. Another thing you could do with ZRemesher is you can control the density of your mesh. So if you wanted more polygons in the face and like less polygons in the back or something, or more polygons in the hands, what you could do is When you're zero meshing, go over here to zero mesher and turn on use polypaint, and there's a color density, and you can change this to like 2, and that'll be 2x, and then you can paint where you want 2x to go, and then you can put it at 0.25, paint where you want less density to go, and when you zero mesh, it'll redistribute your polygons to put more detail where you want it and less detail where you don't. In this case, it's all even, which I'm assuming is fine. And so now we'll go back into solo mode here. So we've got, this is our original mesh, and now I'm going to go to solo. Here's our project. We're still losing a little bit of detail here, and because we have less polygons here. So let's go ahead and we'll isolate. Oh, we got everything back, so we'll do Control D one more time. And now we're up to 1.9 million. I'm going to isolate this top one, and then we'll just run a project all. Let's see. You can, okay, so if you do use loose symmetry, you can mirror and weld, which works if you don't have subdivision history. If you do have subdivision history, you can go to Deformation, Smart Resim, mask the half of object you want to keep, and then resim. Cool, cool. Everybody good? A macro is just something you can record. It's just like recording an action in Photoshop. You can do a series of events that you can record in ZBrush and then save that out as a macro. And then when you want to run that again, just go to your macro menu, and it'll just run your action script basically. If you were to change the pose with the lower resolution Dynamesh and have him lean on one leg more, kick the leg out, the projection will not be distorted. The projection won't pick up unless your original high-res mesh moved as well, but I will, thanks for bringing that up. So what we're going to do is, it looks like we got our detail back. So if I go into solo mode here, we're losing a little bit, but honestly, like we're not losing much. We're losing some of the scraggly stuff. It seems to be picking and choosing what it wants to sculpt to, but we can get that back. It's not a big deal. I think we're in really good shape here. So I'm going to hit Control Shift, bring this back. And now we've got this mesh here. So speaking of posing, if we did want to correct any pose information on here, the great thing about zero mesh and projection is we can just go down to subdivision level 1 to this low res. Well, it's not really low res, it's still pretty high res, but you can go down to like super low res if you zero mesh and then just keep projecting back up. You can go like 8 or 9 subdivisions down if you want to. But now what we can do is go into mask lasso, and we can either manually just kind of go through here with mask lasso and then control click to blur it out. You can go to your masking menu and blur that out, invert that mask, and now when I go to rotate this around, all of that detail is going to follow. So if I go back up, here's all my detail back, and then it's just a matter of corrective sculpting. Now, if you're going to be corrective sculpting, stay as low as you can, and then go like, okay, when I move the leg up, or the oblique's going to kind of go back a little bit, or the gluteus medius is going to pop, or any of that stuff, any butt fixes you want to do, and then you can just keep sculpting up through your subdivision levels. So having a low resolution cage basically for your subdivision level 1 is great for corrective posing, and then just going back up and getting all that detail back. Now, I don't know if you wanted that leg move, so we'll go ahead and move that back real quick. I'm undoing now. You can also just drag through your history slider. If you also wanted to move something, you can hit R, or any of these move, scale, and rotate, W-E-R, and just kind of drag down. You can kind of drag down to the elbow, and then you can like position this like a bone and move this around. Of course, you probably want to clean it up a little bit here. There we go. And again, if you want to blur, just Control Tap. That'll kind of blur it out. Now, if you are going to be doing any of this type of stuff, you'll want to go in and sculpt corrective blend shapes with a brachioradialis, and the elbow needs to pop a little bit more, and the biceps, all that good stuff. But easy enough to fix. So that's one of the uses of using zero mesher. So we've got our low res cage here. So now let's go and see if we need to fix anything. So if we go here, we have our original mesh here, and then our original scan data here. And if we go into solo mode and switch between it, you're going to see some of this stuff is a little bit different. And honestly, I almost like the zero mesh better. But let's say, for example, because what can happen a lot of times on this type of stuff here, let's go to, I'm going to go to my BLA, that's my layer brush. And a lot of times you'll get stuff that looks like this, where it's like, oh, it kind of, it projected, but then it like missed some spots. So which is fine. Project all is going to get you 99% there, and then to clean this stuff up, what you can do is just go to BZP or Z project brush, turn off RGB. Z sub by default is set to 50. You can crank it up to 100 if you want. And you can just go through here, and with both of these showing, if you don't hold down Alt and you just project, it'll just project back, and it's camera based, so you'll want to project, move your camera so you're looking straight down at it and just project that back to your mesh. And you go into solo mode, it's just projecting straight back to your mesh, like so. If for any reason, let's go to BLA, we'll go to our layer brush here. I'm gonna hold down Alt, and let's say it missed a couple of embedded spots like this. In that case, what you're gonna wanna do is go, brush Z project BZP, or you can save a hotkey to that if you use it a lot, or you can throw it down here. Here's some stuff I use a little bit, so you can use a custom menu to do that. And that's just preferences, config, enable, customize, control, alt, drag the stuff around. So with embedded problems, what you're going to want to do is BZP, Z project brush, and then instead of not hold it, you're going to want to hold down Alt, and that'll pull up to the underlying mesh. So now you go into solo mode, and we just pulled up. So it's basically, for this stuff, you want to position your camera and then project back to your mesh, and then hold down Alt, and that'll project up to your mesh, and then when you're done, all that cleanup work's been done. Now this little piece here is in the original scan, so that's not anything you can fix with ZProject. So those are those two methods. Now, caveat, if you have a symmetrical mesh, you probably don't want to have X turned on, because if you have something over here and something over here and you're using the ZProject brush, ZProject will pull all the way through your mesh and you'll see things skewing. Another reason, not for the X symmetry, but one thing you want to watch out for is we'll use our layer brush again. So with layer brush, we can kind of build up something. Let's say we have a huge projection problem here. So I'm going to go to BZP, and if I go straight down, I can project that straight down to my mesh, no problem. However, if I'm like over here and I'm using like projection brush, I'm like, let's project it. What it's doing is projecting camera base, so it's going straight back from my camera and projecting that geometry back. So if I'm like over here kind of skewed, it'll look like it's doing a good job, but when you go into your solo, you're going to see you're getting some really nasty floppy geometry that's like now overlapping itself. So that's the only reason I say choose your camera to look straight down and project straight down, because that's what it's doing. So a little bit of cleanup. Z project, and again, we went over a ton of different methods: remesh, Z remesh, dynamesh, a combination of Z remesh and dynamesh to get things clean. And now I have a pretty clean sculptable mesh. So in this case, if I go back to the original sculpt, that's just a straight line. This didn't pick it up so well. If you wanted to, you could Z project that line in here, but that type of stuff I wouldn't really bother with, So I don't know, pretty clean, pretty decent. Oh, thanks for showing up, Mike. Glad the videos are helping you out. Uh-oh. Yeah, so if we go to the, just like when we were looking at here, if we go back to our original sculpt here, and we go into solo mode, it's like, this thing here, and so this thing, we probably should have cleaned that up as well before I started, because I'm assuming he doesn't really need that. So one thing we can do, let's try this. Let's do a quick save, because this will work just fine. But let's go down to subdivision level 1, and we're going to freeze our subdivision levels. And we're going to go to Control Shift. I'm going to grab Select Lasso, and I'm going to see if I can Select Lasso this ring out of here. Let's grab, let's grab this one. And we'll do Control Shift X to expand. And let's go to Delete Hidden, Close Holes, and then we'll unfreeze. And what that should do is just reproject all of our meshes back to what they were originally and allow us to modify geometry on the lowest subdivision level. So with freeze, you can add horns and all of this crazy stuff, and as long as those are on a separate area there, you can go through, clean up your low res, and then reproject high. You can do this all manually as well. You can go, duplicate off your low res, make any changes you want, and then just project back through manually. Freeze subdivision is just another Just another method to do that. This takes a little bit longer, so I'm not a huge fan of it. And I also like having the control of just doing it manually anyways. But you can see here we've changed that, we've modified the lowest resolution, and we got our high res back. So this way we can just go through and we can just use our ZRemesher here. We can change this, and we can go ahead and knock this back, or any changes we want to do on the lowest resolution mesh. Just go ahead and smooth these things out if you'd like. This line along his body, and you don't have to do it subdivision level 1. You can do it on subdivision level 2 if you want a little bit more control here. Let's go through and clean this up. Clean this up here. And then as we subdivide, you'll get some of the artifacts back, but just a matter of going in. Using a little bit of smooth. You don't need this line here. So, yeah, not too shabby. And if you want to, these are still their own separate polygroup, which I kind of like. This one doesn't have to be its own separate polygroup, so we can go ahead and isolate the bottom of his feet polygroups here, invert that, Control W, make that all one polygroup. And then we're good. I think that'll work. So I'm going to go ahead and save this off. So we've got this one. This is our original scan. I can leave that in there, not a huge deal. And then our original head we can leave in there. I'm going to